Good evening, football fans, or if you're in the Eastern time zone, good morning. Big Al here on this late Sunday night. It is February 2nd, 2025, and welcome to my official Super Bowl 59 pick, as I will be picking next Sunday night's game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to start off with team statistical numbers for both teams, and we'll begin with the Chiefs. Alright. Offensively, the Chiefs scored 385 points, averaging 22.6 points per game with 42 total touchdowns. They had 350 first downs, 106 via rushing, 219 via passing, and 25 by penalty. They were 111 for 229 on third down, which is 48.5%, and 12 of 17 on fourth down for 70.6%. Alright. As far as the passing offense, 404 completions and 600 attempts for 3,780 net rushing yards. That equates out to 6.7 yards per pass attempt and 222.4 net passing yards per game with 26 passing touchdowns and 11 interceptions. They took 41 sacks for 266 yards. On the rushing side of things, the Chiefs ran the ball 450 times for 1,790 yards, averaging an even 4 yards per run, putting up about 105.3 rush yards per game and 15 rushing touchdowns. They ran 1,091 total plays for 5,836 yards, averaging 343.3 yards per game. As far as kick returns, they had 29 for 785 yards, averaging 27.1 per return, and 31 punts for 307, averaging about 10 yards per punt. They recorded 13 interceptions for 102 yards, average interception yards of 7.8. And Check MP's in the building. What's up, homie? As far as kicking, their net average punt yards is 44.7. They had 62 total punts for 3,027 yards. They converted 32 of 37 on field goals. Touchback percentage is 69%. And for penalties, they had 94 for 829, averaging about 48 yards per penalty, or 48 yards per game in terms of penalties. Average time of possession is 31 minutes 6 seconds. They had 10 fumbles on the season with 3 of those being lost fumbles, and their turnover ratio was +6. Defensively, the Chiefs allowed 326 points, averaging 19.2 points per game with 37 touchdowns. They allowed 328 first downs, 112 rushing, and 191 passing, and 25 first downs via penalty. Third down conversions allowed was 93 for 215, which is about 43.3%. Fourth downs allowed 12 for 23 at 52.2%. Their opponents completed 375 of 569 pass attempts for 3,720 yards, averaging 7 yards per attempt. Net passing yards for 218.8 per game, with 24 passing touchdowns and 13 interceptions. The Chiefs' defense would record 39 sacks for 250 yards. Rushing-wise, they allowed 418 rush attempts for 1,731 yards, averaging 4.1 per rush, and 101.8 rush yards per game, with 13 touchdowns on the ground. The Chiefs defense allowed 1,026 plays for 5,701 yards, averaging 335.4 per game. On returns, their opponents had 26 total kickoff returns for 741 yards, averaging 28.5 return yards. They had 25 punts for 253, averaging almost 10 yards per punt. The Chiefs had 11 turnovers on defense, totaling 130 yards. Average interception yards is 11.8. As far as kicking, net average punt yards for Kansas City's opponents is 42.7 yards. They had 60 total punts for 2,867. They allowed 24 of 31 field goals, and their opponent's touchback percentage is 58%. The Chiefs' opponents had 107 penalties for 849 yards, averaging just about 50 yards per game. Average time of possession for the opponents is 29 minutes 14 seconds. The Chiefs forced 21 fumbles, and they would recover 7. And turnover ratio for their opponents is -6. Now to the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC champions, and we'll look at their team statistics for the 2024 NFL season as soon as my Chromebook comes up. Here we go. Okay. The Eagles averaged 35 point, and this is playoffs, so let's change this. Go to 2024 regular season. There we go. All right. During the regular season, the Eagles scored 463 points, averaging 27.2 points per game, with 53 total touchdowns. They had 360 total first downs, 164 via the rush, 168 via the pass, and 28 by penalty. They converted 98 of 235 on third down, averaging 41.7%. And fourth downs, most of them pushes. They went 19 for 27, averaging 70.4%. In the passing area, the Eagles completed 303 attempts, or 303 completions and 448 attempts for 3,194 yards, averaging 7.9 yards per pass attempt. Net passing yards per game is 187.9, with 24 passing touchdowns, 6 interceptions. They would take 45 sacks, losing 323 yards. And this was one of the top rushing attacks in the NFL. 621 rush attempts across the regular season for 3,048 yards, averaging 4.9 per rush attempt, and 179.3 rush yards per game, which is second in the NFL, trailing only the Ravens. And they also had 29 rushing touchdowns. Total offensive plays, the Eagles ran 1,114 for 6,565 yards, averaging 386.2 per game. As far as returns, total kickoffs, they had 33 for 875 yards, averaging 26.5 yards per return. And 28 punts for 257, averaging 7.5 yards per punt. The Eagles had 13 interceptions for 166 yards. Average interception yards is 12.8. Net average punt yards for the Eagles was 44.6. They had 54 total punts for 2,633 yards. They were 28 of 36 on field goals. Touchback percentage was 68%. They had 103 penalties for 793 yards, averaging only 46 yards per game in penalties. They led the NFL in average time of possession at 32 minutes, 22 seconds. They had 19 fumbles, losing 9, and their turnover ratio was plus 11. And look at here, Bobby Lee's in the building. What's up? Well, have a good night, Bobby, and thanks for dropping in. And on the defensive side for the Eagles, they allowed 303 points, averaging 17.8 points per game. That's number 2 in the NFL behind the Chargers. And 33 total touchdowns given up. The Eagles D allowed 293 total first downs, 108 via the rush, 160 via the pass, and 25 by penalty. Philly's opponents were 75 for 211 on third down, which is 35.5%. Good evening, Anna. How are you? The defense allowed 19 of 30 on fourth down for 63.3%. All right. Eagles' opponents completed 337 of 542 pass attempts for 2,961 yards, which is 6 yards per pass attempt, and 174.2 passing yards per game. That's number 1 in football. They allowed 22 total touchdowns and 13 interceptions, and Philly's defense records 41 sacks for 305 yards. All right. Only 416 rush attempts allowed to their opponents this year for 1,771 yards. That is 4.3 per rush attempt and 104.2 rush yards per game, with only 9 rushing touchdowns given up. And Sings in the chat, what's up? All right. Eagles defense allowed only 999 plays for 5,037 yards, averaging 296.3 per game. On to returns. Their opponents had 29 kick returns for 828, averaging 28.6 per return, and 24 punts for 179, averaging 9.2. With 6 interceptions for 57 yards, average interception yards is 9.5. Net average punt yards is 41.6. Eagles' opponents had 67 punts for 3,043 yards. They converted 25 of 32 field goals. Touchback percentage was only 52%. Their opponents had 85 penalties for 694, averaging about 41 yards per game. Average time of possession for the Eagles defense is 27 minutes and 37 seconds. The Eagles defense forced 30 fumbles with 13 lost fumbles. So those are the fumbles that the Eagles recovered. They recovered 13 of those 30. And opponent's turnover ratio is minus 11. Now looking at the quarterbacks for both teams, we'll start with the Eagles since I'm already here. You've got Jalen Hurts, who played 15 of the 17 games for the Eagles, completed 68.7% of his passes for 2,903 yards, averaging 8 yards per pass, and 193.5 yards per game, with 18 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. He would be sacked 38 times, and his quarterback rating was 103.7, which is top 5 in the NFL. And of course, your MVP rushing is Saquon Barkley with 16 games played, 345 carries, 2,005 yards, which is 100 off Eric Dickerson's all-time record. Averaged 5.8 yards per run with 13 touchdowns, and he averaged over 125 yards per game. He would fumble twice, losing only one fumble. Jalen Hurts, not too bad himself. 15 carries for 630 yards. Or rather, 130 carries, 630 yards in 15 games. He averaged 4.2 per run. King Caesar's in the building. What's poppin'? Alright. Jalen had 14 rushing touchdowns and 42 rush yards per game. He would fumble the ball 4 times and lost 2 of them. As for your receivers, you got A.J. Brown, 67 catches on 97 targets for 1,079 yards in 13 games. That's a 16.1 average with 7 touchdowns and 83 yards per game, 353 yards per catch. Just dropping by before college at 8 a.m. tomorrow. I might pick the Chiefs just because of their seemingly endless winning, but I haven't picked yet. I still have to evaluate the Eagles Eagles. Alright, fair enough. Alright, Devontae Smith also played 13 games. He had 68 receptions on 89 targets for 833 yards with 8 touchdowns, averaged 12.3 per catch, and 64 yards per game with 299 yards after the catch. And then the tight end Dallas Goedert played only 10 games. He had some injury issues this year. He had 42 catches on 52 targets for 496, averaging nearly 12 per catch, with 2 touchdowns and just under 50 yards per game and 257 yards after the catch. Saquon Barkley even got involved in the passing game. 33 receptions, 43 targets for 278, averaging only 8.4 per catch with 2 touchdowns. He averaged only 17 receiving yards per game and 245 yards after the catch. Alright, defensively, Zach Bond was the top tackler with 151 total tackles, including 93 solo. The leading tackler for the Eagles this season is Nolan Smith with 6.5 for 42 yards. As far as interceptions, C.J. Gardner-Johnson led the team with 6. Reed Blankenship not too far behind him, with 4. Alright, Singh says, I do not think either team scoring more than 30 points. Well, given the fact that both their defenses are top 5 in scoring, I can definitely see that scenario playing out. And that pretty much closes the book on the Eagles. Now we're going to go over to the Chiefs and look at their numbers. Okay, give me just a second while I get everything situated. That's 2024 postseason. We want 2024 regular season. Here we go. Okay, Patrick Mahomes played 16 of the 17 regular season games, completed 392 of 581 pass attempts for a 67.5 completion percentage. With 3,928 yards, he averaged 6.8 yards per pass and 245.5 yards per game, with 26 touchdowns and 11 interceptions. He would take 36 sacks for 239 yards. And his 93.5 quarterback rating is actually middle of the pack in the NFL. I think he tied Kyler Murray for 16th. The leading rusher for the Chiefs was Kareem Hunt. He played 13 games. 200 carries exactly for 728 yards, only 3.6 per run, with 7 touchdowns, and he averaged 56 yards per game. Isaiah Pacheco played 7 games, had 83 carries for 310 yards. His rush average is slightly higher than Hunt's at 3.7. He had 1 touchdown and averaged 44 yards per game. And Patrick Mahomes did a little bit of running himself. 58 carries, 307 yards at a 5.3 yards clip, with 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 19.2 yards per game with 1 fumble. On the receiving side, Travis Kelce led the charge for the 2-time reigning Super Bowl champs. 97 catches and 133 targets for 823 yards, only 8.5 yards per reception. He had 3 touchdowns, averaged 51 yards per game, about 51 and a half actually. He fumbled the ball twice, losing 1, and he had 340 yards after the catch. Xavier Worthy played all 17 games for the Chiefs in his rookie season, had 59 catches on 98 targets for 638 yards, averaging 10.8 per catch with 6 touchdowns. He averaged 37.5 passing yards per game with no fumbles, and he had 407 yards after the catch. The number 2 tight end for the Chiefs is Noah Gray. He played all 17 games. 40 catches, 49 targets, 437 yards, about 10.9 per catch with 5 touchdowns. And he averaged around 26 yards per game and 210 yards after the catch. DeAndre Hopkins, who was traded from the Titans to the Chiefs midseason, he had a total of 41 catches and 59 targets for 437 yards in 10 games, averaging 10.7 per game, or 10.7 per catch rather, with 4 touchdowns. He averaged about 44 yards, and he had 108 yards after the catch. Now these are numbers with the Chiefs, not the Titans. Then there's Rashee Rice, who had an injury-shortened season, only 4 games, 24 catches, 29 targets for 288, averaging 12 per catch with a couple touchdowns and 72 yards per game, which actually led the team on average. And he had 186 yards per catch. On the defensive side, Nick Bolton was the team's leading tackler with 106 tackles, including 73 solo. Second on the team is Drew Tranquill with 94 tackles, and then you have Justin Reed with 87 tackles, and all 3 players played 16 games. Tershawn Wharton, this is the defensive tackle for the Chiefs. He led the team in sacks with 6.5. And that's pretty much it. So, position by position, I think quarterback is kind of split down the middle, even though Patrick Mahomes is statistically the better quarterback. I think it's a split. He has to throw a lot because their run game is pretty much non-existent. And as for Jalen Hurts, when he throws, he can be pretty effective, but he doesn't have to throw as much as Mahomes because Jalen has a better quarterback or a better run attack. The running game easily favors Philly. If Saquon has the ball, he's very dangerous. And the Chiefs defensively will have to find a way to slow down number 26. Wide receivers, I'm going to give the slight advantage to the Philadelphia Eagles, as they have two number one receivers in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. And they also have Dallas Goedert, who is a pretty good pass-catching tight end. The offensive line goes to the Eagles. They have easily the best offensive line, if not one of the best, in the NFL by far. Up front, it's going to be up front, I say the edge goes to the Eagles because they can stop the run. The Chiefs can stop the run, but not as effectively as the Eagles. I think as far as linebackers go, I'll have to give the edge to the Chiefs because they can stop opposing players better than the Eagles can. The secondary, it's kind of a toss-up. I'm going to have to give Philadelphia the slight advantage because you have young players in that secondary, including Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Marshall, or Quinyon Mitchell. Mitchell has pretty much established himself as a shutdown cornerback, because what he's done to opposing wide receivers this year is nice. And then on special teams, I think the edge goes to the Chiefs. Harrison Butker also had a down year, just as Jake Elliott has. But I would go with Butker for that clutch kick. If the game is close and they need to tie it or even win it, I would go with Butker to make that kick over Jake Elliott. And with that, here is my official Super Bowl pick and my Super Bowl 59 MVP. I think the key for the Eagles is run Saquon. And if you do have to throw it, be as efficient as you've been all season long. Because again, you have three talented receivers in Brown, Smith, and Goddard that can catch the ball, and AJ specifically, he can hit that home run when you need him to. And for the Chiefs, it's stopping Saquon Barkley and having their pass rushers come after Jalen Hurts. If they do both of those things effectively, we could see a Chiefs three-peat. But with that, this is going to be a really good game. I think the Eagles will come out on top in this one. Because at some point, someone has to stop the black magic of the Kansas City Chiefs. Am I right? So my official pick is Eagles 27, Chiefs 24. The current point spread is Kansas City at -1.5, and the over-under is at 49 points. So 27-24 is right in that area. So I have the Eagles winning and the Eagles covering. And I do think that Saquon Barkley will win Super Bowl 59 MVP. Unless Jalen Hurts plays lights out, throws for like 303 touchdowns. Who knows? But yeah, that's my official pick. Eagles win 27-24. Eagles cover the spread as the underdog. And Saquon Barkley wins Super Bowl 59 MVP. Now, will he win league MVP? Find out on Thursday with the NFL honors. Catch it at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on Fox. And I think Snoop Dogg is hosting this year. We had a couple good years with Steve Harvey. Now it looks like they're going with Snoop Dogg as the host. So make sure you join, or make sure you tune in for the NFL honors on Thursday night. Anyway, that is going to do it for my Super Bowl 59 pick. And I want to thank each and every one of you for hanging out with me all season long. For my picks and everything. My picks, my power rankings, all that good stuff. This has been a very good football season in my opinion. And I can't wait to see what 2025 has in store. So make sure you join me next season as well. In the meantime, like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell and get notified every time I go live. I love you guys. You are the real ones for hanging out. So with that, Big Al signing off. Thanks for watching and enjoy the pigskin. Peace out. Oh, and one more thing. Fly, Eagles, fly. Oh, and one